5. Installing internal cables of the cabinet. 5.1. BSC internal cables. BSC internal cables include the clock cable, Ethernet cable, RS485 cable and other cables. The system clock cable connects the clock generating board CLKG with the 8K, 16M and PP2S clock signals of the UIM board. In consideration of the backboard connector space and cabling, each system clock cable implements clock distribution for 3 resource shelves and 6 UIM boards. The connector on the system clock cable at the CLKG end is a DB44 pin plug, and at the UIM end it is a DB9 pin plug. 6 round 8-core single-strand cables are adopted. The physical location of end A is at the silkscreen label CLK out on the backboard RCKG1, RCKG2 panel. The physical location of end B is at the silkscreen label CLK in on the backboard RUIM1, RUIM2, RUIM3 panel. Line 8K clock reference cable. The Line 8K clock reference cable connects the line clock and the CLKG board and sends the 8K clock reference extracted from the line to the clock board for phase lock processing to implement system clock synchronization. Both ends of the Line 8K clock cable are crimped shielded plugs for 8P8C straight cables. Round 4-core single-strand cables are adopted. End A is connected to the marked position 8K out debug 232 for RDTB or the marked position 8K out ARM 232 for RMNIC. End B is connected with the marked position 8K in 1 of RCKG1. GPS 8K clock cable. The GPS 8K clock reference cable connects the GPS 8K clock and the CLKG board and sends the 8K clock reference for the GPS module of the clock board for phase lock processing to implement system clock synchronization. Both ends of the cable are crimped shielded plugs for 8P8C straight cables. Round 4-core single-strand cables are adopted. End A is connected to the GCM 8K position on the GPS plug-in box. End B is connected with the marked position 8K in 2 of RCKG1. The GPS PP2S and 16-chip clock cable. The GPS PP2S and 16-chip clock cable outputs the PP2S and 16-chip clock signals from the GPS module to the CLKG board. Both ends of the cable are crimped shielded plugs for 8P8C straight cables. Round 4-core single-strand cables are adopted. End A is connected to the positions 16-chip 0, PP2S0 and 16-chip 1, PP2S1 for the GPS module. End B is connected with the marked positions PP2S 16-chip for RCKG2. Ethernet tandem cable of control plane. The control plane Ethernet tandem cable interconnects the system internal resource shelf and level 1 switching shelf control plane Ethernet with the control shelf C-hub. End A of the cable is a DB44 pin plug, and end B uses a crimped shielded plug for the 8P8C straight cable. An FTP Super Category 5 shielded data cable is adapted. End A of the cable is installed at the silkscreen labels FE1-8, FE9-16, FE17-24, FE25-32, FE33-40 and FE41-46 on the backboards RCHB1 and RCHB2. End B of the cable is connected with the marked positions FE-C1/2 and FE-C3/4 of the RUIM1 board, or the marked positions FE1 to 10 of the RUIM2 and RUIM3 boards. Notes: 1. Because FE43, FE44, FE45 and FE46 are for the same trunk in terms of software processing. The network interfaces FE43, FE44, FE45 and FE46 cannot be adopted when a resource board such as BUSN or BPSN is cascaded with a C-hub at the control plane. 2. For RUIM1, the cascading network interface is located at FE-C1/2. For RUIM2 and RUIM3, the cascading network interface is located at FE-C1/2 or FE-C3/4 or FE-C5/6. FE-C1/2 is usually recommended. It is not possible to cross-use FE-C1/2, FE-C3/4 and FE-C5/6 at the same time. That means it can only be configured at either FE-C1/2, FE-C3/4 or FE-C5/6. Ethernet interconnection cable of UIM control plane. The Internet interconnection cable of the UIM control plane interconnects UIM control planes for different shelves, when dual or multiple shelves form an office without a control plane tandem hub. Both ends of the cable are crimped plugs for 8P8C straight cables. An FTP supercategory 5 shielded data cable is adapted. Ends A and B of the cable are connected in turn with the marked positions FE-C1/2 and FE-C3/4 for the connection of different RUIM boards or the marked position FE1 to 10 of the RUIM2 and RUIM3 boards. PWRD RS485 cable. The PWRD RS485 cable connects the OMP board and the PWRD 485 and monitors the PWRD state. Both ends of the cable are crimped plugs for 8P8C straight cables. An FTP supercategory 5 shielded data cable is adapted. And A is connected to the marked position PD485 on the RMPB board, and B to the silk screen label RS485 at the back of the power supply plug-in box. GPS module RS485 cable from the OMP to the rack inside. The RS485 cable for the GPS module from the OMP to the rack inside connects the OMP with the GPS module. And A of the cable is connected to the marked position GPS 485 on the RMPB backboard, and B to the marked position RS485 on the GPS plug-in box. Internal signal transfer cable of the power plug-in box. The internal signal transfer cable for the power plug-in box connects the PWRD board signal with the PWRD board signal. Connectors at the PWRD-B and PWRD sides of the cable are IDC 34 holes and 34 core flat cable is adapted. And A of the cable is installed at the silk screen labels X9 and X10 of the PWRD board, and B at the silk screen labels X11 and X13 of the PWRD-B board. Fan monitoring cable. The fan monitoring cable implements fan monitoring for the power. Both the P-power side and the fan side are crimped and shielded sockets for 8P8C straight cables. An FTP supercategory 5 shielded data cable is adapted. And A of the cable is installed at the silk screen label fan box 1 to 4 at the back of the power plug-in box, and B at the left RG45 position at the back of the fan plug-in box. 5.2 BTS internal cables. Interconnection signal cable. The signal interconnection cable implements signal interconnection between the plug-in boxes and between individual cabinets. And A of the signal interconnection cable with the BDS cabinet is connected to the label BBDS at the TRX backplane, and B to the label BDS at the RFS set-top. And A of the signal interconnection cable with the PWS cabinet is connected to the marked BPWS on the TRX backplane, and NB to the label PWS at the RFS set-top. The TRX backplane outputs monitoring signals to the connection cable for the extended monitoring interface at the RFS top, and A of the signal interconnection cable between the TRX shelf and the RFE plug-in box is connected to the Mark B RFE at the TRX backplane, and NB to the Mark B TRX on the RFE plug-in box backplane. And A of the signal interconnection cable between the TRX plug-in box and the HPA plug-in box is connected to the Mark B HPA of the TRX plug-in box backplane, and NB to the HPA plug-in box backplane. Internal monitoring cable. The RFS internal monitoring cable involves front and back entrance control monitoring, temperature monitoring for the RMM board and TRX board, flood monitoring and fan plug-in box monitoring. And A is connected to the TRX plug-in box backplane, and B is connected to the front and back door magnet switch, fan plug-in box, cabinet top and the right lower foot of the cabinet respectively. RFS-RF cable. The transceiver of each loaded sector needs to transmit one channel of RF signals and receive two signal channels. After HPA amplification, the transmitted RF signal is output to the antenna through RFE. While the two channels of received signals require no HPA, they are directly output to the transceiver by the RFE. In addition, one channel of 10 MHz clock signals are output to the RFE through the TRX. Each TRX board corresponding to the TRX plug-in box backplane should connect 4 RF signal lines. The ends A of two signal receiving cables are connected to the labels DRX TRX and MRX TRX, and end B is connected to the interfaces identified as RXD and RXM of the corresponding RFE backplane. And A of the signal transmitting cable is connected to the label TX-TRX of the TRX backplane, and end B to the RF-in interface of the corresponding HPA board of the HPA backplane, and then to the TXR interface of the corresponding REF board of the RFE backplane via the RF-out interface. And A of the 10 MHz clock cable is connected to the label TFB-TRX at the TRX backplane, and NB to the corresponding label TXFB of the RFE backplane. The RFE output to the antenna is transferred via the set-top, and A is connected to the label ANT at the RFE backplane, and NB to the label RFE at the set-top. Connection lines for other loaded sectors are the same as the just mentioned. Internal cables of the BDS cabinet. Internal cables for the BDS are the power connection cable and the monitoring cable connection sensor. The power cable is discussed as part of the power supply and grounding topic. Note: the BSCB and BTSB internal cables introduced before are generally installed prior to delivery, and only a check is required. External connection cables for cabinets are covered next.